BYU's NIL collective got in some hot water earlier in the week. What does it mean for Utah? And does it mean problems for BYU? We're breaking it down on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first view and listen of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. If it's your first time joining the show, make sure you like and subscribe. This episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined now by the WildUte. Philip, kind enough to stop by, meet with me here, one of the hosts of College Football Mafia. And Philip, we have quite the story to get to and talk about, as it was reported by the Salt Lake Tribune. They spoke to a couple of BYU players that said the NIL collective cut their pay before this past season. They were paid below some other Big 12 schools. And this is one of those situations where there's smoke, there's absolutely fired. I had Alex Markham on my show a while ago. He had talked about he was hearing some things about what was going on with BYU and NIL. You hear this as well now coming out from the Salt Lake Tribune. And there's definitely seems to be something going on with BYU making these promises. How does that affect their recruiting? I'm not sure, because there are stories like this. And this is something everyone got all mad at me when the whole Alex thing popped off and everything. The reason I did not have a crazy reaction is because you hear stories like this going on all around college football. So I don't think this is going to have a crazy impact on their recruiting and ability and everything. But nonetheless, anytime there's an article that comes out talking about how you made promises in NIL and it didn't come to fruition, it's going to create headlines. So this is definitely something.
So JT, seriously, everyone was thinking that BYU, first off, one of the big takeaways from this article, we're going to get all into this, is that BYU had basically unlimited funds. Just think about it, how much NIL collective money that we have heard that BYU has. This Salt Lake Tribune article actually speaks that BYU has finite resources, not infinite resources. Yeah. And then they were actually cutting the pay back on a lot of starters from the 2024 season compared to the 2023 season. Right? So a lot of the starters weren't even making the same base number and stuff for their NIL, which is absolutely shocking in this world that we're living in NIL. Seriously, this is an absolute bombshell article out there, for anybody, just to get a little bit of the insights, the story of really an NIL collective, the discussions that went on in the locker room at BYU. And I can't wait to really break this down a little bit more.
Yeah, Kevin Reynolds did a great job reporting it, talking to some of the BYU football players who were frustrated. And yeah, I think the biggest thing is just those discrepancies. I mean, there are stories in here just of the players who thought they were going to be getting this much, and then you don't get that much. And this is, I think, one of the things that's so fascinating is you hear about the human side of this, just of the guys who were going to then thought they were going to make that much money, and then they don't end up getting that. This is where NIL just becomes so murky. And yeah, I mean, and I am, like I mentioned, very curious to see how in recruiting, if this has an effect. I mean, BYU had this all happen. They went 11-2. So they were still able to produce at a very high level. But anytime you make promises or say things and they don't always come to fruition, and like I said, there's lots of differing opinions out there, but where there's smoke, there's fire. This seems like it could genuinely be something moving forward for BYU.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to take a snippet from the article here. This is pretty revealing. Okay. Quote, "I'm not here to pay your rent or bills. I'm not here for any of that." Min Kim, who was associated with the BYU collective, said, according to BYU defensive end Isaiah Garcia, "You guys are entitled, greedy, asking for money." Look, JT, that's not a good look for anybody, for any program, for BYU, for anybody. And it's a bit shocking to see something like that too. NIL is supposed to be for really just paying somebody for their worth out there, their marketing worth. But it seems like in this new world of college football and everything, it's strictly pay for play. We all know it goes on everywhere. And this kind of article just confirms that too. BYU is essentially having a salary cap number. They're reducing the salary number for their players going into 2024 based on 2023's poor performance, according to the collective management. They went 5-7, losing record. They're treating this like a business, this collective like a business. And BYU has a lot of good business minds out there. Like they've got, I mean, guys, with space and stuff, BYU has got several billionaires that came from that school and stuff. They have a really good school as far as business goes. And like they're treating this NIL collective strictly like a business, like an NFL salary cap almost. And it's shocking to see.
It is absolutely shocking. I mean, to hear about players, that's the biggest thing. Like these relationships are built on trust. And you have some players that came out and said, hey, we were told we're going to get this much, and we didn't. And like I said, this is happening a lot across college football. But if I'm a recruit and I'm doing my homework in my business and about the school I'm thinking about attending being BYU, I'm going to be asking questions about what happened here. What is the reason? And NIL is so new that these promises get made about what these players and individuals are going to get. And then when they don't come to fruition, it creates a very messy situation for everyone. And that's what you have here when you have BYU players speaking out against and like saying like, hey, BYU's NIL collective said this, and then we actually ended up getting this. That's a bad look.
What's kind of shocking too is like in the article, it specifies for like the top tier players, basically BYU's approach to NIL over the last few years. This might have changed going into 2025. We don't know that, right? This is historical. Is that they'll pay their top end players, or the top tier, if you want to call them tier one players, about $5,000 a month, and that equates to $60,000 a year. Right. Like, and then they'll pay some other starters, second tier starters, around $2,000 a month. And then some starters could be even making $1,000 a month. Like, to me, it's just shocking to see that these figures are a lot lower than anything that I would have imagined.
Yeah.
Especially since, like, you saw the basketball player, AJ Abaje, right?
Devontae.
Abonse. So he made, is that $7 million contract?
Some said 7, some said 5. Yeah, there's conflicting reports. Somewhere like that, something in that range.
So when you've got a basketball player coming in and getting that type of NIL offer, and then like the football players, your top tier football players are making $60,000 to $100,000 maybe on the top end, that is shocking. Like that type of investment and resources and everything. And even the article goes on to say like how upset some players were about that basketball contract. They feel like, you know, they were getting undercompensated and everything. This is the world of NIL. It's tough, man.
It's incredibly tough. And the fact that you have players like we talked about, I mean, just regardless, I'm sure there's a lot of BYU fans, and I've already seen them in the comments in the past, and I'm sure they're going to be in this show too, talk about how this article doesn't mean anything. They don't like it. Like that's all fine. But there has been building smoke towards what's going on here, and all is not completely well. Yes, BYU still has a chance to be very good this year. I think they have a very good team on paper. I like a lot of things about BYU, but this is definitely something that they need to get corrected and fixed. You do not want stories and reports like this coming out. So then the parents who are thinking about bringing their recruits on campus go, wait, why did he have a bad experience? Why was he told this and then ends up getting this? That's the real concern here. And I think BYU definitely has to be careful. And not even BYU. It says every college football program has to be very careful what they promise in NIL, because you're going to have guys who you're all excited to get, and then they disappoint. And then you're like, what are we paying this for? Well, you may sign the contract, or you told them that this was the deal, and then it's not going to happen. Like, that's going to create distrust. So everyone's trying to figure out how to manage this, Philip, and it's getting messy, like we said.
I mean, like, it's the Wild West right now. Like, there's no rules in place for NIL. Yeah. They're trying to get rules. Like the Big Ten and the SEC are trying to agree on rules and stuff that would drop down to the Big 12 and the ACC and the rest of college football. But right now we're in the Wild West, and BYU is living in that world just like Utah and every Big 12 school and every Big 10 school and SEC school and everything, where there's just no really clear rules in place. So anything goes. And unfortunately, a lot of times the kids get hurt and everything. You know, like it's the players that take the brunt of that, because the school, the collective can handle things like a business and everything, and they could delay payments when a players thinking they're going to get like a payment in December, as this article says. The December payments were delayed because there's speculation in this. This isn't a fact necessarily, because of the transfer portal. BYU is waiting for the transfer portal to end before they were going to make that December payment to the players and stuff to add more incentive. I mean, in any type of normal salary job and stuff, if any type of employer tried that, that would be strictly illegal. You can't do that, right? But this is NIL. This is the Wild West, and all the control kind of goes with the schools. The players are getting more and more of it with the funds and everything, but it's pretty wild. Now, one more thing to think about too with this. This is shocking. Like, so there's mention in the article that there's a non-compete clause in the BYU contracts. And that basically, that clause was saying that if you wanted to get paid from the Royal Blue Collective from BYU, that you couldn't go out and find external NIL opportunities if you were a player. So there has to be something involved in that too, to tie the kids, the players, to the school and prevent transfers as well. Just from like a business perspective, that's the only thing that makes sense when you're structuring a contract like that. But it's pretty wild to see like a non-compete in some type of NIL agreement that the collective's offering a player. This is wild stuff.
It's insane. Just like the whole point of NIL was to allow these players the opportunity to make money with various deals. And then you're trying to limit which ones those will be. I don't like that. And this is where we've been talking about what's been going on at BYU and their school. This is where we're just talking about NIL. Then there's the whole agent aspect where they're coming in, they're driving up the price and the amount they take for themselves too. Like there's a lot of things that need to be fixed with this, and BYU themselves, they have to look in. Like it kind of talks about in the article too, they feel like they made some mistakes and there's things they want to improve on and move forward too with how the way some of this was handled. And in the NIL era, everyone's learned on the fly. So this is a very fascinating report that could lead to distrust with certain recruits and things coming to BYU. And maybe then those players end up at Utah. That's how Utah could benefit. Obviously, when BYU takes a step back, Utah benefits from that too. So this is a very fascinating story that we'll see how it evolves. And if anything like this continues to leak out relating to BYU and NIL deals. One thing that came out that was very positive for Utah is a certain PFF analyst had some very nice things to say about Spencer Fano. We're going to be talking about those comments he made about he could be one of the best offensive linemen, not one of the best offensive tackle coming back in college football. We're reacting to that in one moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our great friends at PrizePicks. Yes, the NFL season is over, but you know what's here, or at least almost here? March. March basketball is so close to arriving, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With PrizePicks, you pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. It's fast, easy, and keeps every game exciting. If you are building your lineups this week, like for me, I'm going to look at Jason Tatum, right? I think he's going to have more than 29 points, and I think Anthony Davis can get more than 12 rebounds too. And when he comes back and gets healthy, right? Like that's just super quick and easy. And I make my picks in less than 60 seconds and stay engaged all game. When I win, my money hits my account in as little as 15 minutes, no waiting around. PrizePicks even offers weekly promos like Taco Tuesday, where you get discounted player projections for even more value. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps, no space, to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, you can run your game with PrizePicks today. All right, Philip the Wild Ute back with me here. And Philip, talking about Spencer Fano. This is a guy who's been loyal to Utah, who I'm sure, as one of the best offensive linemen in the Big 12 last year, probably had some decent NIL offers to potentially go elsewhere. And he said, with his talent, I'm sure. And he said, you know what? I'm going to stay at Utah. And I know Spencer Fano's really good. PFF thinks he is amazing. There is a story that came out actually from friend of the show, Max Chadwick, talking about where he was ranking his offensive linemen. And in this story, and Pro Football Focus just in general as well, they have Fano ranked as the top returning offensive tackle, who in the article you can see at PFF, he had a 93 grade this past season overall. And he was just so dominant in the run game. He was 93.6 in the run game, which was the best in the country by over 3 points. And this is just, to have a site like PFF that covers college football nationally, to give it this kind of love to Spencer Fano. I know how good of a player he is. For PFF to say he's the best in the country, that's an incredible feat for Fano. Seriously,
when's the last time that Utah had a tackle like this? Jordan Gross? We're talking like 20 plus years ago, like level, a long time ago.
Garrett Bowles was good, but I don't remember him being talked about as the best like Fano is.
Like, yeah, I mean, like Bowles was Fano, like is an elite player. I mean, he is such a road grader. He is a true Utah man too. Like he's got the size, he's got the physicality, he's nasty, he's everything that Utah football is. JT
Mhm.
really like, and the fact that he like brought his brother over too, and they're playing
Mhm.
together is unbelievable. And they're just studs, and like they're true Utah guys. And in this era, this NIL era, where you can flip on a dime. It's basically daily free agency, it feels like, for Spencer Fano, being such a stud player that probably could have got more money playing for a different school to stick here and be a Utah man. He will be a beloved Ute. A
Mhm.
beloved Ute. I love this guy, and he's an absolute freak of nature beast. And he is going to have a massive season this year at right tackle. I can't even wait to see how Dampier plays off Spencer Fano.
Mhm.
It's going to be so much fun to watch.
It's going to be incredible. I mean, Fano to me is a guy that he's so good. I think he's only going to be here 3 years. I think he's going to
Yeah.
be off to the NFL after this year. Like that's how good he is. And look, what makes Spencer Fano so good, right? Well, he is an incredible athlete is one thing right away I look for. You see the ability he has to reach the second level, and no matter who he's going up against, linebackers, defensive ends, defensive tackles. And I mean, I mentioned defensive tackles, like that's even just more strength. Like his combinations of size, speed, strength, athleticism, his footwork is fantastic. His technique is good. So rarely did he get beaten pass protection. His pass protection grade was top 30. He ranked it was a 75, they said there. But even when he would give up sacks, like so many of them, I was looking at the quarterback play, being like, why we need to
Yes.
get rid of the ball, or like, why are we running into this sack? Like, he is such a good all-around offensive lineman. Like you mentioned for Dampier, like to have that level of protection on the right side is just fantastic.
The offensive line for Utah and led by Fano, if you're Devin Dampier, like what have you stepped into? Like you've just given it the biggest gift right here from
Yeah.
New Mexico's offensive line to Utah with arguably the best player on the offensive line, obviously, and stuff with
Country.
Spencer Fano.
Yeah.
Here, just talking about it. I mean, they're going to make some moves this year. Plus, we're talking about Wayshawn Parker and all the opportunities, all these new weapons that we
Yes.
have at Utah. I expect big time things from Spencer Fano. And in his career is not just going to shine brightest here at Utah. The guy's so dang talented. He's been talented for so dang long. He's going to be a freaking stud in the pros.
Yes, he's going to be an absolute mauler. I will. The article makes an interesting point about he might be a guard at the NFL level due to arm length, which hey, it just says right away. I mean, Max Chadwick was on this show last week talking about who was contributed to the article for PFF, I believe. He said, like, I have Fano as a first rounder. Like, that's how high I think
Yes.
he is. Like, regardless if he plays inside or out at the NFL, like, this is a first round talent we're talking about. So, is he the best returning offensive lineman in college football? I think he just might be. I can't sit here and say I've broken down the Miami offensive lineman they have ranked second. Like, there's some other really good players in the country, but Fano to me is absolutely fit to be considered for this. Like, he was so good last season, just all around dominant. You didn't have to worry about it. You could run the ball to the right side too. And I know Utah's run game had some struggles, but that wasn't because of Fano. He was so good last year. And we're going to talk about the rest of the offensive line in a moment, Philip. But when you pair him with Caleb Lomu, like that tackle duo, I do think it's the best in the Big 12. And that to me is easily a top 5, if not an even higher tackle duo in college football.
Oh my gosh, it's like these two guys, Caleb Lomu and Spencer Fano, they basically part the Red Sea, JT. That's freaking how good these guys are. These guys are freaking amazing. We're talking about Utah having one of the best offensive lines in the nation. Forget the Big 12. Like, seriously, Utah might have the best offensive line in the freaking nation, guys. When's the last time we said that about a position group? Sometimes it's the DL or something. But no, this is different. Like, this is special offensive line. And you got to think, okay, so Spencer Fano is so talented that he probably will go pro after this, likely be a first round pick, second round pick. But really, this is the year to capitalize. When you've got a player like Fano and stuff, you got to get it done this year. You can't just wait 2-3 years and stuff. This is the year the Utes offense needs to get it done through the pass game, through the run game, through the Dampier run game and everything. I expect a lot of points and stuff, and pretty much going to be led by Mr. Fano. And then Lomu at left tackle and Steph just beating people up with his massive size, man.
Yeah, when you
It's
have
like Paul Bunyan.
it really is. When you have a lineman like Fano and Lomu, you don't have to worry about the blindsiders. Either way, just outside pressure because Fano obviously not on the blind side. But that's just so massive what this team has in those two. I think they're incredibly talented. I think they'll lead the way. They are leaders. When you have that third or fourth down and you need to get it, have a guy like Fano who can do so many things, can get out in space, take care of smaller defenders too. I'm a massive fan of Fano's game. It's been so fun to watch him grow. And I was someone too. I said coming into last season, like there's a lot of love for Spencer Fano. And I was like, hey, I think he's going to be really good. Year 1 to year 2 offensive line make a jump. But it wasn't perfect year 1 at left tackle. He struggled. But why was that? He was a true freshman out there, and it is so hard to play as an offensive lineman, as a true freshman. So the fact that he was even out there was a testament to how good he was. We saw him make a massive sophomore leap. We are at the point his first year, there were games it looked like, and I believe he was benched at times as a freshman at left tackle. They were rotating him in with Tongai, who's now the guard, to now one of the best offensive linemen in college football. And Philip, I think there's a story in there too about like letting these guys grow and develop and not giving up on them so early. I don't think people were really giving up on Fano, I'll say, but there were times where just we looked at Fano and we're like, oh, he's not looking great as a left tackle, but this fact that he was out there as a freshman is a testament to how good he was going to be, and he has become that guy.
He's one of the best recruits in Utah history too.
Yes,
as far as like ranking and everything. This guy had all the skill set and everything. Whittingham wasn't going to give up on him. Harding wasn't going to give up on him. He had a few low PFF grades, especially, his freshman year and stuff. Like you're saying, GT, like he rubbed that off his shoulder and stuff, and he's just totally dominant now. He's a dominant player. And like in that season he has a sophomore, I mean, like he played like a senior.
Yeah.
And like going into this junior season, which is probably going to be his last and everything, he's just expect big things from the guy and everything. And it's exciting to see kind of really what kind of holes the guy can open up, what space he can open up for the offense. I mean, there's going to be plenty of opportunity. Like this offensive line for the Utes should protect Dampier like crazy, like, I mean, it's just a gift to have it. And I just love the fact that he's a Utah man too, brothers on the team and stuff, like sticks with Utah despite the new Tanavasu move and everything. And he's really good friends with New and that whole situation. He's still stuck with Utah. And like, I just love that. And I'm going to be super excited to see him in the pros, like before, like a Monday Night Football game saying, hey, I'm Spencer Fano and I'm from the U, baby. I can't wait to see that in the future.
Yeah, I'm incredibly excited to see that too. And that will be really cool to see on Sunday Night Football, because he is definitely going to be playing there in the near future. But we have him for another year, and we have him along this Utah offensive line. Philip, you made some comments on the offensive line about how good you think they'll be this year. I am going to respond to those and say how good I think they'll be as we preview the offensive line as we're gearing up for spring ball, less than a month away from the first practice. We're talking about that in one moment. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel has you covered. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. And there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off and just want to be part of a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a big payout, you can even combine your live bets into the same game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team in late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three. I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. There's FanDuel.com for your one shot at $150 in bonus bets. You can make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. And speaking of the NBA, yes, the Jazz, it's not going great. They're probably looking to continue that the rest of the way. But how about after the All-Star break? Lakers, Luka got the big win with LeBron over Nikola Jokic recently. Can they keep it going, climb the standings in the Western Conference? Is Houston legit? This is a Rockets team. They keep finding ways to win. I got my eyes on Memphis. The Grizzlies have been in there all season long, one of the higher seeds. Can they keep it up after some past playoff disappointments? How about in the Eastern Conference? The Knicks with Karl-Anthony Towns, a couple losses to the best teams. Are they going to be able to bounce back? However you're leaning, player props, over-unders, FanDuel has you covered. Make sure you guys head over to FanDuel. You want to bet on the NBA today. All right, Philip. You made quite the comment on the offensive line last segment. Did you say you believe they're one of the best in the country? Is that what you said, offensive lines?
They're certainly one of the best in the country. And like, let's just think about this. We've already talked about the tackles. We've got the Red Sea that's going to be parting because of these studs, right? Let's look at the interior now. Senior. So we've got Togiai, senior. We've got Kump, senior. Mokafisi, senior. So there's your guards, and then Kump is your center for this year and stuff. So you just got an experienced crew, big guys too. All these guys are big. They've been in the system for many years and everything. This is a veteran, talented offensive line, and I really do think it's probably a top 5 in college football. Could be the best, but certainly top 5 with the experience coming back. And it's going to open up ample opportunity for a lot of points this year.
It is. I think I'm trying to figure out where I want to rank them. I already said I think the tackle duo is one of the best. I think Utah's interior of their offensive line really struggled last year. And I think back to what happened with Oklahoma State coming into the year. We talked about they had 5 starters returning. It was going to be awesome with Ollie Gordon, and it just wasn't good. And some of the offensive line didn't perform up to their standard too. So honestly, for Utah, if the 5 that were there last year win the job again, hats off to them. I give them all the credit in the world. But I do think there needs to be competition for those interior offensive line spots in particular. Fano and Lomu are fantastic. Mokafisi should be the right guard still. I think he's really good. Even if I will say, I think he still struggles in pass protection a little bit. I'd like to see him clean it up there. Jaren Kump and Tanoa Tongai. Those are the 2 guys I'm really looking at, and I'm going, can this offensive line be dominant with both those players starting? Because this was not a dominant offensive line last season. They had moments where they were, but then we really struggled to run the ball. Were teams packing the box against Utah? Yes. But Kump and Tongai and Mokafisi, like all these guys at various points, someone would just struggle to hold their block. And the tight ends deserve some blame for that too. The tight ends Utah's had, it's been 2 years now, and they didn't replace Logan Kendall still. Like he was and Cole Fotheringham, those 2 in back-to-back years, like that, those are your blocking tight ends. That was big. The tight end blocking wasn't as good for Utah last year. The interior offensive line blocking would be up and down, and that's why Utah wasn't always a dominant run team to go along with the fact that teams are packing the box because they don't respect the throw game too. So I do expect Devin Dampier to improve Utah's rushing game, obviously, but I do think the interior needs to be better. Philip, do you expect it to be the same 5, or do you think there will be any changes up front?
I think it's going to be the same 5. Given the consistency and everything another year in the weight room, I think that you get these 5 guys. Hey, if it doesn't work out at the beginning of the season, then maybe you swap somebody in. The guy that like we haven't talked about a lot is Isaiah Garcia. Look, he's a tackle.
Yes.
But like, can you move him interior? Like, say that Mokafisi is having trouble. Like, can you move him and spot him there? Could he be a switchblade for you? He's a talented kid. He's a big kid. Like, I'm wondering what, like, the depth, I guess, if there's any kind of concern with the offensive line, like you're looking at the depth pieces have played before, but like there's not the highest end talent necessarily in the depth pieces for Utah and stuff. So you're hoping like for not many injuries, but the consistency, I think you got to bring the line in and try them out at least for that UCLA game. UCLA is going to be week 1. They're going to have a Big Ten defensive line. We'll know a lot about the Utah offensive line after that game. Probably after the first quarter of that game too.
I agree. I completely agree. I want to see, what we say, Philip?
Yeah, so it's just the consistency though. Like when you've got interior guys that played that much football together, and like Jaren Kump, like he's been at Utah for like 10 years, man. Like it's been a long time.
2020 started all 5 games at right tackle. Like what? And he was a guy who was he went on his mission before that. So he was all state, all Salt Lake Tribune, and all USA Utah high school football in 2017. So like we're talking about a guy who's been at Utah a very long time. He was already named a captain. I like Jaren Kump a lot. He's been a great ambassador, leader, and role model of what it means to be a Utah football player. I thought he struggled at times last year, and so did Tongai. So those are the 2 I'm really looking at. And Mokafisi in some ways too. Like I just don't think those guys should be given their jobs just because they started last year. They should have to earn it. They should have to be the best. And I hope, and I do believe that is what Utah will do, because as much as I believe in a guy like a Jaren Kump, I do think that that's a guy who we've seen a lot of him now. So is that just who he is as a player? Is he going to have those mistakes? That's where the questions arise. Can Utah win at the highest level like that? So I have questions there about the interior offensive line, Philip, and I'm curious to see how they look in spring ball, even if I do think the starting 5, at least for spring ball, will be the same. And
the structure will change too, because we've got a new offense.
Yes, we did.
Philosophy, right? Like, so you've got a bunch of guys that are playing Andy Ludwig's offense, right? More of a pro set for Cam Rising. Now you've got Beck coming in, Dampier coming in. It's basically a 180 flip. Can these guys adjust now? Can they be the linemen that are going to succeed in that system too? That is a question mark going into this year for sure.
It absolutely is.
It's not just a normal pro set offense anymore. Can they pivot? A guy like Spencer Fano, with how athletic he is, and Lomu, I'm not worried about those guys. But you're right, JT. The interior line could be a concern and everything with the foundational changes of the offense. Now we're going to be more spread based.
It is going to be. So how will this group perform? We'll find out. Spring ball gets underway in a few weeks. But Philip, if people want more Utah football talk or just more football talk, where do they need to head over to?
Yeah, College Football Mafia. We do multiple shows a week, live shows, talk about college football news nationwide, Big 12, Utah, all conferences, realignment, everything. Stop by, check us out.
Philip, thanks for making the time. Thank you for making the time to come on.
Thanks, JT.
That's going to do it for today's Locked On Utes. We'll be back with you tomorrow talking the latest in Utah football, Utah athletics, and now Utah men's basketball coaching search even. We hope you'll join us then.